The Brazilian Cat. One day, Marshall King was invited to stay at Greyland Court, which belonged to Everett for 7 days. Everett King was the nephew of Marshall's father and his first cousin. He had spent an adventurous life in Brazil and had now returned to this country to settle down on his fortune. He owned a park to house his collection of rare exotic animals. Marshall was a business failure and was broke. Thus, he took this opportunity to seek some financial assistance from his rich cousin.
Welcome to Greylands. I'm delighted to meet your acquaintance, Cousin Marshall.
Nothing could be more hearty than his manner, and he set Marshall at ease in an instant. His wife was from Brazil. Her manners, however, were vastly different. She did not attempt to conceal that Marshall was not a welcome visitor at Greyland Court. Her actual words were courteous, but her expressive dark eyes told Marshall very clearly that she heartily wished him back in London once more. However, Marshall's steps were too pressing, and his designs upon his wealthy relative were too vital for him to be upset by the ill temper of his wife, so he disregarded her coldness. Marshall's room was a charming one. Everard implored his cousin to tell him anything that would add to his happiness. The dinner was excellent. I had never met a large-hearted and hospitable man, except for his attitude towards his wife.
The best train of the day is at 12:15.
Said she at breakfast, but I was not thinking of going today. He had overheard my last words, and a glance at our faces had told him the rest. He closed the door behind me.
My husband has asked me to apologize to you, Mr. Marshall King.
Please, do not say another word, Mrs. King.
You fool.
She hissed with frantic vehemence and turning on her heel swept back to the house. The insult was so outrageous.
I hope that my wife has apologized to her foolish remarks.
Oh, yes, yes, certainly.
You must not take it seriously. My poor dear wife is incredibly jealous. She hates that anyone should come between us. I am about to show you the jewel of my collection. It is a Brazilian cat.
He led me into a large empty room. At the center of the room stretched a huge creature as large as a tiger.
Isn't he splendid?
Gorgeous.
This fellow has never tasted living blood yet, but when he does, he will be a terror. At present, he won't stand anyone but me in his den. I bought him when he was a baby. I am his mother and father to him. Now, Tommy, into your cage.
That monstrous cat walked over to the one side of the room. Everard King came out, and taking the iron handle, the line of the bars in the corridor began to pass through the slot in the wall and closed, so as to make an effective cage. Then the butler came and threw his meat inside his cell. The beast pounced lightly upon it, carried it off to the corner, and there, holding it between his paws, tore and wretched at it.
He is the most perfect specimen in Europe. The people at the zoo are dying to have him, but I really can't part with him. Now I think I have inflicted my hobby upon you long enough, so we shall go to our lunch.
Day after day, Marshall found that his rich cousin had been receiving a lot of telegrams. On the last day of his visit, Marshall finally mentioned about his predicament.
But surely you are the nephew and heir of our relative, Lord Southerton, one of the richest peers in England.
I have every reason to believe so, but he will never make me any allowance, nor take any notice of me.
By the way, have you heard any news of Lord Southerton's health lately?
He has always been in critical condition ever since my childhood.
We shall talk it over tonight.
In the meantime, Everard King was receiving even more telegrams and his wife was even more unpleasant towards Marshall. That night, both Marshall and Everard were in the billiard room. Marshall flattered himself, a very businesslike statement of his own unbusinesslike ways and lamentable position. He was depressed, however, to notice that his companion's eyes were vacant and his attention was elsewhere.
I'll tell you what, my boy, I never had a head for figures, so you will excuse me. You must jot it all down upon paper and let me have a note of the amount. I'll understand it when I see it in black and white.
The proposal was encouraging.
I must see my cat before I go to bed. A high wind excites him. Will you come?
Marshall followed his cousin to that large room again. The cat was in a bad mood. Everard said he was going to give his cat supper to soothe his temper. He gave Marshall his lantern and left. The door immediately shut with a metallic click behind him. Hey, let me out!
All right, don't make a row. You got the light all right.
Yes, but I don't care about being locked in alone like this.
Don't you? Haha, you won't be alone long.
Let me out, sir. I tell you, I don't allow practical jokes of this sort.
Practical is the word.
In the morning, Everard returned to the room and saw Marshall lying on the ground with his trousers torn into ribbons, and a great pool of blood all around him. He thought Marshall was dead. Then he turned to his cat.
Good old Tommy.
Then some unexpected thing happened. Little did he know that the taste of blood would turn the cat into a fiend.
Down, you stupid beast. Don't you know your master?
But the beast continued ripping him apart. Marshall was in fact half dead. That was a miracle. He was sent to the hospital. One night when the nurse was absent, the door of his chamber opened and came the wife of Everett King.
Well then, I only wish to say to you that you have yourself to blame. From the beginning, I tried to save you from him. No one knew him as I do, who has suffered from him often. As things have turned out, you have been the best friend I've ever had. You have set me free.
Marshall was never destined to see her again. Once he had fully recovered, Marshall was back in London. His lawyer came to greet him.
Congratulations! You have been Lord Southampton for the last 6 weeks.
Lord Southampton was one of the richest peers in England.
Your cousin, Everard King, was the next heir to the estate. Now, if it had been you instead of him who had been torn to pieces by this tiger or whatever it is, then of course he would have been Lord Southampton at the present moment. I also happen to know that Everard King paid the late Lord Southampton valet to send telegrams to him every few hours to tell him how he was getting on. Was it not strange that he should wish to be so well informed, since he knew that he was not the direct heir?
Very strange indeed.
Hey, remember to sign up for my website at Get Some Free Reviews.